get started. All right, so welcome to today's class of W9D3 Platoon. Hopefully everybody had a nice Thanksgiving. And I did miss you guys last week because unfortunately I was on a road trip at the time that class was going on. But hopefully you guys had a good time. And from the assessment feedback, it looks like most folks did pretty well. So congratulations for that. Again, everybody either should have received or should be receiving feedback on the assessments very, very soon here. If anybody would like to go over their assessments, has any questions about their assessments, the usuals, stuff like that, feel free to let myself or Hyder or another instructor know as well. So before we jump into the fun stuff for today, anybody have questions about the assessments that I can try to answer in the meantime? Hey, no questions about the assessments. Does anyone have any questions at all before I jump into stuff? Okay, let's get into it then. So tonight is going to be more SQL. As usual, we're going to be doing SQL for another, I'm going to say 2 weeks, very heavily before we transition over to some slightly non-SQL related things with web design. So if you're enjoying the SQL material, don't worry, it will continue for quite some time. If you're not enjoying the SQL material, it's not going to be that long. We'll get through it. So let me pop open my VS Code here. Where are you? VS Code, come here. There we go. All right. So new module, I'm going to make a new demo file. So what exactly is SQL? Would someone mind giving me like the explain for a 5-year-old version of what SQL is and what we use it for?
SQL is a language used to build and access databases.
Awesome. Yeah. So all SQL for our purposes is, and quite honestly will be for pretty much eternity, SQL is just a thing that lets us store data. So just like an Excel sheet, just like, I don't know, a stone tablet, SQL is just a place that we can use in order to create databases and store stuff. So how do I, so let's say that I want to create a database of what's something my books. So we've done this in Python a million times. You set up the class, and then you instantiate the class, and you have the class methods, and so on and so forth. How can I do the same thing in SQL? So if I want to create something that keeps track of a ton of books, what are the steps that I would need to do?
Create a database.
Okay, how do I create a database?
You'd type the command create DB and
All
name your
right.
database.
Yep. So it would be create DB, and I don't know, let's just call it like books demo. Okay, cool. So the good thing is that nothing showed up in the console, which means that we don't have any errors. If stuff shows up in the console, this is one of the very rare times when things showing up in the console is a bad thing. It didn't show up, nothing showed up, so we're good. All right, so now I've created my database. And remind me what the command is to view the database using Postgres.
Is it PSQL \D?
Yep. First we want to do PSQL, and how do I specify which database I want to see?
You just put in the name of the database. It's just PSQL if you want to see all your databases, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes,
Gotcha.
PSQL should do everything. For us, we're just going to target it to the book demo. All right, so cool. Now we're in, and just to make sure, does everybody, both Windows and Mac, does everyone have Postgres running? And does anybody had any problems with this so far? Okay, cool. So I'm assuming Postgres hasn't broken on anyone at this point, which is a good sign. If it does, please let me know, because Postgres breaking is very annoying. All right, cool. So we have our new database, books demo. So to view it, I can do my /d. Oh. Okay. So how do I view something in Postgres, or how do I view a database in Postgres? Or more specifically, why is /d not working?
We haven't made any tables in our database, so it's empty.
Yeah, that sounds like a little bit of a problem. We've created a shell, a database to populate stuff, but there's nothing in our database to show. So when I say the /d command, which is like, hey, show me what is inside, it says there's nothing here. I didn't find any relations because, and the reason it says relations instead of tables is because SQL is a RDBMS, or a relational database system, which is a really fancy term for a thing to store stuff. Okay, so let's go up to my little demo file here. How do I create a table? What does that do? Or what does that entail?
You have to create the rows and columns.
Okay, so how can I write that out though in SQL?
Just write create table.
Yep, so create, and we can say table, and let's call this table, I don't know, book things. So also, I'm sure Chad's probably mentioned this, but it's just generally good practice, just like in Python, when you're creating tables, or much like in Python for classes, to keep it like first letter capitalized and use camel case. It just makes it a lot easier. So that's what I'll be sticking with here as well. All right, so I've got my command for creating the table. Let's say, what are some types of fields that we can use in the SQL? If I wanted to get the title of a book, how would I do that?
So you do title for the name of the column, and then space, and then you identify the type of column. It's going to be like varchar or integer.
Perfect. Yeah. So we do varchar 100, for example. And we put a comma, we go to the next. Let's say I want to specify the year. How would I specify the year of publication or something?
You can do year and date format.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. Where is date? Oh, it might be time. Date, time? No, okay. Here. Let me see what shows up in time. Oh, nothing. Okay. Well, for just like simplicity purposes, we'll just use integer. But otherwise, the date, the time/date time feature in SQL is very helpful. But also, seriously, check it out. So if I type in, I don't know, like some random thing, and I just type in one letter, like for I, there are so many different SQL commands that start with the letter I. It is absolutely insane. It's the same thing with like data types. Like if I type F, so look for, let's say, like a function or a float, there's so many other things. There's for, following, foreign. from. Like SQL has tons of commands. You do not need to memorize all of them by any means, and that's why Google and SQL like help are there for you to use. So I highly, highly recommend taking advantage of those resources when possible. Okay, so now we have our thing to create our table. So in order to create the table, we're going to quit that. And how do I create the table now that I have the SQL file? Well, what do I need to do in my console?
You could do PSQL and then books demo -f and then put SQL demo.sql and it'll run that file in the
That doesn't seem to have worked. Let's see, it says port connection has sort of failed. The role -f does not exist.
you could do PSQL books demo and then the less than symbol and then PSQL demo.sql.
So you said books demo and then the less than sign. And what did you say after that? Did you say PSQL again?
File name, so SQL demo.sql.
Awesome.
Oh, never mind.
Okay. That is very weird.
So you have
That
your
did,
comma on 3 after integer. Do you need that comma?
it's
You
generally good policy to have it at the end just so that like,
Is that
sorry, say that
necessary?
again.
You What need a about the semicolon if there's just one thing at the end after the closing
On line
parentheses?
4.
Oh, that's a good point. Thank you. Let's see, that ought to do it. All right, so if we run this, okay, so that does not want to work. But the problem with our earlier command with the -f is that we did not specify. So we did write books demo, but if you go to PSQL, enter it, and I type help. Actually, wait. So if we just go to PSQL, we need to specify the database that we're going to be using. And to do that, we need to use the -d command. So if we go back here and I type -d, just make sure I spelled it right. Where did you go? Yeah. Okay, well, it does say that there's a syntax error here. So I don't know, it might be due to this.
I do think you need to take out that comma, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably it. All right, okay, let's try this one more time. There we go. Hooray. Okay, so our table has been created. So again, the -d makes a huge difference because when we're putting things into the console, it needs to know what each parameter is, and it doesn't automatically know. So if I just typed in like PSQL books demo, SQL demo.sql, as you can see, it has no clue what to do. So it's always a good idea to specify, hey, this is the database I want to edit, and this is the file that I'm taking it from. So specifying in the console like that is always a really, really good idea. Does anybody have questions about what we just did as review? Okay, so let's try something. Let's try something. So let's say now that I realize that I forgot to put in the ISBN category or something. You can say ISBN char, like I think it's like 14 or something. So let me try rerunning this so that way it'll update our table. Uh-oh, I'm getting an error. So it says relation book things already exists. So what do I need to do here if I want to update the currently existing table? So to include this new column.
You need to drop the table and run it again.
Okay, cool. So how do I drop the database, drop the table?
Is it just the statement on top, drop table?
Yep. Yeah, so something that I like to do whenever I'm creating a new table is always just like drop it first, just in case like I have an already existing version. So if we run this, we can see it drops the table and creates the table. But let's make sure that it actually does create the table that we expect. So we're going to go psql books demo, run it, and hit /d. And look at that. We do indeed get a very nice little table here called book things. So how do I view what's inside of book things if I want to check that out? What do I need to type?
Like select all from book things.
Yep. So you select star from book things. Oh, come on. Okay. Maybe it's okay. Oh, cool. So it shows us there's nothing in there, which is exactly what we want. But how do I add a row to book things? If I want to add a row in the console, how do I do that?
Like insert.
Okay. Actually, here, let's start it here. So we said insert. All right. So what do I do next?
You'll say into and specify the table you're going to insert the row in.
All right. So insert into, and we'll say book things. And let's see what else. So now I need to specify what we're going to insert. So we can say like full book from like 2022 and item just like 7. So that's definitely an ISB. And we quit this and rerun it. That. Okay, so where might my syntax error, what might my syntax error be here?
It's the double quotes, probably. You have to use the single quotes.
Perfect. Yes. So this is something that people get tripped up by all the time in SQL, which is also one of the very annoying things about SQL. It does not like double quotes. It really does not like double quotes. SQL will yell at you if you use them. So even though VS Code thinks double quotes are fine. I can type something here like "whoa," and it doesn't throw an issue. But SQL does not like it. So single quotes are generally good things to use. But that still gives me an error. So what might the other things be that are causing a problem?
Is it because 2022 is not an integer?
Yes. Yep. So yeah, we always want to make sure. So Python is sometimes, again, coming from Python to SQL, Python's a little bit fast and loose with our data types. Sometimes if we put in an integer instead of a string, it's not the worst thing in the world. For SQL, no, everything has to be in the proper format. But unfortunately, we still have a syntax error.
It doesn't know what it's inserting into.
Well, we did specify that it's inserting into book things.
Oh, I mean like specifying a title, year, and ISBN, unless that's optional.
Well, that should be what comes after book things, right? Or is there one thing that we're missing?
Do you need to put
Well-
you need to put values before
Yes.
the value? Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, if we're saying that we're inserting to book things, it's like, okay, That's great. Good for you guys that you're putting stuff into book things. And then we give it all the stuff. And it's like, where does this go? How do I use this? I do not know. So that's where the values keyword comes in handy. Now, if we run it now, again, it sees that we drop the table, we create our table, and it inserts into book things, which is great. And we can go in and check out book things or books demo, and we can do our select all. And now it says that we have one row, which is exactly what we want. So any questions about that? Again, just running back through the basic stuff. I know you guys have covered this before, but just before we move into the more complicated or marginally more complicated things, I just want to make sure that we're okay with the basic stuff for SQL. Does anybody have questions, comments, concerns, things of that nature at this time?
So I'm just curious, why didn't the star work? Because we always use the star. I guess all is the same thing, but for select all, select star.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure about that. But let me try. See, okay, so when I try it now, it decides to work. Before, I have no clue why it wasn't. But that is probably one of the mysteries of VS Code.
Oh, it's a good thing that there is something there that we can use instead.
Yeah. So generally, if there's like a shortcut, there's also usually a longer word that you can use. Like in Python, for example, instead of saying like the ampersand, you can always type out like AND and stuff like that. It's helpful, especially for little things, especially when it comes to SQL with all of its many idiosyncrasies. But yes, the star and all are the same thing. So generally, people will just say select star because it's far more condensed and it's quicker and easier. Okay, any other questions for now that I can answer about this stuff?
Yes. So specifying column names is optional then when you insert into a table.
So it's optional when you insert everything, or when you insert a full row into a table. So here, let me see.
Yeah, because typically we have like a primary key, but we wouldn't.
So
you wouldn't enter it in.
So in this case, like if you wanted to enter them in, what I would say is something like title, year, ISBN, values. So that way, you know, and the computer directly knows. Title is cool book. Year is 2022. ISBN is this thing. But if you don't specify all of them, like let's say, and here again, just to demonstrate that this works. Okay, never mind. This doesn't work for some reason. Actually, wait, let me see. I think I can figure out why.
It just has to match like exactly how you had named them.
Yeah, I don't think they could be strings, right?
Yeah, that is probably the issue. Let me try removing that. This is one of the problems that happens when you come from Python to SQL, in that the syntax changes significantly. Okay, let's try it now. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so strings are problematic in SQL. But yeah, so again, title corresponds to core book, year corresponds to 2022, ISBN corresponds to that whole mess. But again, let's say if we were to we can specify partial inputs when we're putting things into a table, right? So let's say that we want to remove the ISBN column. Then if we just did this, we need to specify the columns that we're putting into. Because again, if you have 3 columns and 3 inputs, it's obvious where each one goes. But if you only have 2 columns and 2 inputs, but your table that you're putting them into has 3 columns, it's like, okay, I can put the first one in the first column, the second one in the second, or I can put the first one in the second and the second one in the third, or I can put the first one in the first column and your second input into the third column. It doesn't know what to do. So that's why when you're putting in like less than a full row, you need to specify. But again, let's make sure that this works and that it doesn't unexpectedly. So run that. Again, we drop our table, create a table, inserts it, and we can just double check here. Let's do our nice little select star. And again, we see title, it's a cool book, year 2022, and the ISBN field is blank. Why? Because we didn't specify. So hopefully that helps clear things up a little bit.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
Oh, Omar, when we create a books demo, is it only available to that path?
What do you mean by that path?
Oh, like for example, I have lots of program, right? And then I create, and then that program is in, or that code is in another folder. Can I access the books demo? Or
Yeah, sure. So let's try that. So let's see. Right now, I am in my demos folder. So let me quit this real quick. And again, you see like I'm in a very, very nested thing on my desktop. So let's say though that I just want to go back to my desktop, change directory. Oops. Just see. There we go. So now I've gone from my nested folder here, which is where I was working with my SQL demo file. I've gone over to my desktop, which does not have my SQL demo file. But let's try typing in our PSQL and going to books demo again. Hit enter, and we're still there. I can even open up a command prompt, which opens up in like my main user directory. And I can still type PSQL-D books demo. And it still goes there. And to confirm that this is like the right thing, right, I can just say select star from book things, and it shows me what I want. And again, it's the same thing over here. So yes, you can access a SQL database from pretty much anywhere on your computer, unless you specify otherwise, which is kind of complicated and a mess. But for basically 99% of your databases, you can get to them anywhere on your computer because they can be accessed via a port.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And there is something on that note that's kind of cool. So has anybody seen the PG admin app before?
Yes.
Okay. So has this been something that's been discussed in previous SQL classes or not really?
No, we haven't gone over the app itself. I think one of our instructors showed us a different app called Post ICO or Postico, but not PG admin yet.
Okay, so I have not used the other app, but PG admin is the one that basically comes default with Postgres. Like you can literally download it. It comes bundled with like Postgres when you download it. So I like to use that a lot. And you can use it on Windows or on Mac. I am 90% sure it comes on Linux too. So I highly recommend getting it. But it's a super cool application because it lets you manage all your databases and all your users and all your super users, and it lets you change their usernames and passwords. And it is really, really cool. So since we do have a SQL database here, I'm just going to run through how PG admin works real quick, because this is something that's kind of nice. So the first thing is, since it's PG admin and people actually use Postgres admin to store like real databases, they do have a master password. So that's mine, and I am now logged in, which is great. And I can go to my servers. I can see that I have my Postgres equal 15. Just enter the Postgres user password. I don't have one. And now we can see all of our Postgres stuff for Postgres 15. So it shows you like all the different sessions that have been run. It shows us which databases have been accessed, the user, which application. So like this is PGAdmin 4. It shows you a bunch of data, which is kind of cool. It shows you different properties, These are all of the things that you set up when you set up your Postgres. So it's saying like, okay, how do I access it? It's on localhost. It lives on port 5432, which is how anyone can access it. Then there's a lot more stuff. But the thing that we want to pay attention to are these three things: the databases, login group roles, and table spaces. So if we start with the databases, you can see we have our generic Postgres database, which is for admin stuff. We don't really touch that. And hey, look at that. This is the database that we created. It's the books demo one. So if I go to, let's say, SQL, well, this shows us a little bit about the SQL properties of that database. I can go to the dashboard and see how people are using it and if they've used it and so on. We can go and see the database schemas that are in play, which is a lot of stuff. But basically, this shows you the databases. Also, you can drop databases from here by literally just clicking delete drop. You can add schemas. You can add all sorts of other things to it, which I do not know how to use. But if anybody would like to learn how to use them in the future, we can totally do that. You can like refresh it or restore it. And you can see who's been accessing your database from where and how. It's insanely helpful and very, very useful for database management, because let's say that you're doing like the school project all over again. And for each release of the school project, you're creating a new school database. So by the end of your school project, you have like, for each release, you have like 5 school databases living on your computer. And you can just clear them out really easily by logging onto pgadmin and just going here and saying delete/drop. And poof, now your database is gone, which is fantastic. The next thing that you can do is check out the login/group roles. So here, if I go back to this guy and I type in PSQL, right? PSQL automatically signs you in as the Postgres user, which is great because the Postgres user is a super user. It can read and write and change everything. And we can see that if we go to the properties tab here and we see there's no password. We go to the privileges, it says, so Postgres can log in. It's a super user, so it can do a ton of stuff. It can create roles, create databases, which is great. But let's say that you also have somebody else who needs access to the database, and you don't want to give them all of these tools. Well, in that case, we can go to login group roles, and we can create a brand new role. And we can give it like a name. These are all the names that I've used for previous projects. And you can give them passwords or even like account expiration dates for like temporary users. You can give them various privileges, like if you want them to be able to log in, or if you want them to have the ability to create databases, etc. So having that functionality is very important. And then lastly, you also have your table spaces. So basically, pgadmin gives you full control over basically all of the management stuff that goes into your Postgres databases. So I highly recommend downloading this, especially for when we start using SQL more seriously, when it's going to come to data storage for your personal and group projects. But in the meantime, feel free to get it, play around with it. It should not break your entire computer unless something goes catastrophically wrong, which hopefully it shouldn't. But I highly, highly recommend this application. So again, I'm not officially endorsed or sponsored by them, but it's very cool. I can highly recommend. So any questions about the very, very rapid pgadmin summary? Okay, if not, there is honestly only one more item on the agenda for tonight, which is, where are you? Database diagrams. This is, in my opinion, one of the coolest things in existence. So on the left, we see very complicated code for adding schemas and references and all sorts of other yucky things. Also, I'm going to go dark mode because, or actually, dark mode is a little hard to see. I'll keep it in light mode for now. And, again, this is a lot of code that, to be honest, is not the easiest thing to read and understand. How do we uncomplicate this sort of code? Or, like for your problem for today, how can we make it easier to visualize the relationship between various things? Well, for that, we're introducing database diagrams. So here, let me go to Slack real quick and pop this Delta thingy. But basically, database diagrams are a very nice way to visualize the relationship between various databases. So, for example, like here, they have something for like e-commerce merchants. And it shows how the merchants connect to public users and how the IDs connect up to like the country code. Like the country code here is specifying the ID for this guy, which relates to this. So it's a really nice like visual way to show how all of this cool stuff comes together, which is really nice. So this is a tool that I highly recommend you guys use in order to make stuff like the diagram shown here. And the diagram here is, by the way, if anybody ever asks you, is called a entity relationship diagram because it just shows you how different entities are related. And also something cool you can do is you can export this. Unfortunately, you have to sign in, which isn't great, but the accounts are free. But you can also import data from Postgres, which is very good. So yeah, also they have tons of sample data sets, and you can also make like your own diagram. Again, you have to sign in half the time, but you can also just like clear everything and make your own. So it's a very good tool. I highly recommend taking advantage of it. And you know what? Actually, let's do that like right now. So let's say that we're making a database for like of an apartment building or something. So what are some different schemas that we're going to need for an apartment building?
We'll need tenants and their information.
Okay, yeah, let's call it tenants table. So first thing that we need is an ID, which is an integer, and we're going to call this the primary key. Then we would have like name, which is going to be a varchar. You'd have like age, which is an integer.
Excuse me, Umar, are you still sharing?
Oops. Okay. Is it sharing now?
I can see it now.
Okay. Thank you. But yeah, so we have like the ID, which is an integer, which is going to be our primary key. We've got the name, which is a varchar, and age, which is an integer, and we can have like we can have like apartment number, which is also an integer. And let me try switching this. Okay. Yeah, the format for using the DB diagram is not the easiest thing in the world to use, unfortunately, because it's not written in exact SQL. It's in like a little bit of a funny version of it. Here, let me try just removing these. There we go. So, and again, this can be exported to actual SQL, but it's a good way to just like keep track of and come up with your own database schemas. So we've got one table for our tenants, and let's come up with another one for like individual apartments. We get a table like apartments.
So you're frozen again.
Okay. Are we unfrozen now?
Yes.
Okay. I keep hitting that button. All right. So here again, we can do the same thing. We can do like an ID. I'll set that as the integer, that's a primary key. We can say, and that's like our apartment number. We can say, I don't know, like condition, and set that to be like an integer. And I guess we could say like, yeah, I guess that's probably good. So these are two completely separate databases as it stands right now. We got our tenants here and apartments here, but I need to connect these databases somehow. I need to relate the tenants to the apartment. And this is where the relational part of the database comes in. So there is a really, really easy way to connect these two up together, which is, well, first off, does anybody have any clue as to what it is before I try stuff?
You could probably connect the apartment number and the tenants with the ID from the apartment.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, how does anybody know how we do that before I share? Oh, gosh darn it. Why is my thing glitching out? All right. If not, that's totally okay. Again, this is a new thing. So the first thing we do is type ref. And let's see, now we need to do tenants dot apartment number. And I believe it's this. We do apartments dot ID. Yeah. All right. And now if we look here, right here, let me try doing it the other way. Wonder. There we go. That flips it around. So we see here, now the our two databases are related. So we can go from the apartment number, from the apartment number here is what relates to the ID here. And we have that little connection, which is very cool. And well, if we had an account, you could sign in with your email and export this to actual SQL code. And that SQL code could go back into your VS Code here and be used to create your tables and such, which is, again, a very, very useful utility.
I think also, can't you just drag the column you want to link to the other, just drag and drop, and it makes a link between them?
Yep, yeah, that's the other way to do it too. So here we can delete this ref, for example, and click, drag, and it just shows up down there. So again, I don't know why it's showing it with double quotes here. The system writes it in like pseudo code almost. But again, it's a very, very helpful thing. And if not, I don't think it's in your homework today, but there should be an assignment coming up relatively soon where it'll ask you to make a bunch of relational databases. So like one thing for a schema that'll, for example, connect like actors, movies, and like movie tickets or something like that. So obviously a movie is going to have a ton of actors. So you need to have a field that connects the actors to the movies, but then also movie tickets are associated with individual movies. And then that has another little connector that goes from like the movie ID, for example, to the movie ticket and so on. So this is where the real power of SQL comes in handy, in that not only can you have separate tables that act separately, and it's great for storing those, but it's also fantastic for connecting databases. So that way you can find out, for example, if you wanted to, you could write a query that says, hey, I want to find out what the condition is of the apartment that tenant with the name John owns, for example. And what the query would do is say, okay, I'm going to go and find the tenant, the row in this table that has the name attribute of John. Then I'm going to go to the apartment number, but oh wait, apartment number here links up to the apartments thing. I'm going to go and find the apartment belonging or associated with the tenant whose name is John. And then I'm going to return the condition of that apartment. So again, that's something that's not super easy to do when we're dealing with, say, Python and nested arrays, or pandas and its arrays or tables. So SQL is fantastic for these sorts of really, like, I guess you could say niche, like data searching and data storing tasks. But that's what we'll be using it for. So I highly recommend you guys to use this dbdiagrams.io thing because it's really nice and helpful. Again, I have seen many personal and group projects use this very successfully. And again, not endorsed by this either, but it is a really good tool. So anybody have questions about that?
You said that you can export with this tool to automatically create like the syntax you need for Postgres?
Yes. So if you visit the link, which I believe I popped in the Slack, there should be like an export button right at the top where my mouse is hovering. And if you click that and you make an account, it should basically give you SQL code.
Is that something you have to pay for, don't you?
I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure it should be free, but I am actually not sure. But here, let me try it, because I definitely made an account for this a while back.
But I mean, that's incredibly useful.
Yeah, it's insanely helpful. Okay, cool. So I signed in. There's an upgrade thing, which, to be honest, I don't know what that does, and I am not going to click it. But if you go to like export, yeah, you can export to PDF, you can export it to Postgres, you can even export it to a PNG if you want to like take a picture of this and show somebody, like, like say your boss or your coworkers, like, hey, I'm coming up with a schema. Can we discuss it and draw it? You can export it to a SQL server. But here, if I click export to Postgres, and we go here, and let's say, edit this. So it's opened up in my notepad, which isn't great, but I mean, look at this. So it's creating two tables, right? We've got the tenants table with our integers and ID, which is our primary key. The name is varchar, age, and the apartment number. That's creating our apartments table. And then here it writes the alter table where it adds in the foreign key ID, this guy, which references the tenant apartment number, which is this guy. So it comes up with the relational part of the databases. It comes up with that code for you, all depending on what you do in here. So hopefully that answers how the export bit works. But we can also import. So if I go here, let's say that I wanted to like copy paste my schema, I can import my schema into our diagram. And if we look down here, now I somehow have a book things table too. So it's imported our new table book things. And if I wanted to, in tenants, for example, I could add in like a book and have that be a varchar. And then I can link favorite books with the title of their favorite book. And then that's going to come up with a new reference down here. So you don't just have to link IDs together or integers. You can also link fields of other data types too, as long as they match up. So it's a really helpful tool. I can't emphasize that enough. But yeah, does anyone have any questions about this or concerns or things like that? Okay, if not, that is honestly the end of lecture for today. We've got some fun stuff lined up this evening, though. So the first one is going to be the car sales, which everybody should be able to access for today's. It's on the group exercise tab for today. Can everybody click and access that? I just want to make sure.
Yes, sir. I have it here.
Okay, cool. Because yeah, there were some issues porting this over from a previous platoon because the link had broken. But I'm glad that we're all able to access it. If anyone is not, please do let me know. So we're going to create an entity relationship diagram, again, using dbdiagram.io or something else. Feel free to do whatever you want. You can pull out like PowerPoint or Google Slides or whatnot. But we're going to do it based off of the schema.sql. So they create like 5 tables. Yeah, 5 tables in here. And they want you to create a relationship diagram. Then they want you to load the schema and the data into a table on your computer, and then write out some SQL queries to answer the questions that are listed here. And they have a couple of questions, but the questions are kind of cool, and they'll encourage you to think and Google around for some SQL commands, which is very valuable. So that's going to be our group exercise. And then after that, there's a ton of just like Postgres exercises they do like a ton of different things. If you want to, we can keep doing those in groups, or you can do them individually. It's up to you. And yeah, today is basically just like a mess around and have fun with SQL day. So super light. There's nothing very intense or crazy for the next couple hours. So before I form the group, before I form the groups, does anybody have questions, comments, concerns, things like that?